Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Roger Thompson on the line, and he is Vice President of Student Services and Enrollment Management at University of Oregon. Roger, welcome to the show.
Hey, Adam, it's great to see you, and thanks for having me on today.
Big deal to have you on today. Of course, I want to talk about our book that we have coming out together. So big announcement there and maybe some of the writing that you plan to contribute. But I also want to talk about your experience at University of Oregon and also some of maybe your other higher education background. So a high position leading in a large organization. Want to get your feedback. Well, a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives listen to this, and I'll be interested to hear your vantage point on leadership and what it takes, especially to navigate through challenging times. But Roger, we will start this episode the way that we start them all with our Mission Matters Minute. So Roger, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Roger, what mission matters to you?
Well, this is why I love being on your show, Adam, because mission is everything. And our mission in higher education is to serve students and families and help them dream and aspire and create a future that sometimes they can't even define when we meet them. And so the mission for us is to help people move through life and accomplish and achieve what they want to do. And we do that, as you said, through a large organization and lots of people working to make it happen. But that's the core of our mission. And it's why I like being with you, because mission does matter.
Fantastic, and great to have you on again. Before we get into present day, let's go back a little. How were you drawn to higher education and making a career out of it? Like, where did that begin for you?
It's an interesting story for me, Adam, because I think over the years I've thought about it a lot. And I think it really began when I was a little kid. My grandfather worked at universities, and he used to walk me around as a little guy across these beautiful campuses where he worked.
Wow.
And he would bring the buildings to life. He would say, oh, this building over here, this family didn't have any kids, but they were a big grape farmer in the Central Valley of California, and they wanted to do something to make a difference. He made these buildings almost and campuses really kind of magical places. So that, I think it kind of began there. But as I went through life, went through college myself, I, ran into people that helped make a difference for me, that made my college experience great. And I got really involved in lots of different things on campus, and so getting to know people that were influential and helping make my 20s a really good time were people that led me to get into higher education, because at some point I kind of stopped and thought, this is really cool. Like, how do you get into this? And so I kind of asked, mentors and others that I knew. I'll never forget one of my mentors said to me, well, how everybody ends up in higher education? They just don't want to leave college. They want to keep doing what they have done. I had been student body president, really involved in different things on my campus. And so I think it just kind of naturally flowed into what my career would be. But I really think it started back with my grandfather. Those walks around campuses and him just making them such magical places got me kind of fired up about helping young people find their college experience to be as good as mine was. That's how I got into it.
It's funny that you say that. It started out as like a lot of people that get into higher education just don't want to leave. They love college so much. And initially, I remember, so like my frat brothers, the ones that stood around college and the ones that, got jobs right after college, in college, right? And they didn't want to leave in there because you're still kind of young when you're starting out. But it may have started that way. But I noticed that really quickly, and maybe that was just their first job out of there. But I noticed that really quickly, like their mood, their atmosphere changed, and they matured probably a lot faster than I would say myself, or a lot of maybe, let's just say, people that went out in the work world and they got their first job doing something maybe they didn't necessarily always want to do. But I noticed that they had this other level of seriousness from the standpoint of being able to like really understand what it was to make a difference and to help other students like along that path. Can you talk a little bit about like where you kind of just fell in love with the idea and where you're like, you stayed? Because not everybody stays, but at some point you had that thought where like, no, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Well, when I graduated from college, like lots of people, I wasn't entirely sure what I was going to do. And I eventually landed in the middle of the Midwest, which was really different for a West Coast guy like me. So I ended up at the University of Central Missouri, where I was working at the university, and I thought I knew what I wanted to do. I thought I did, but I really didn't. About a year and a half into that, I realized, I don't want to do that. I can't determine how I'm successful. So I was working in kind of advising kinds of roles. And it was just, I needed a scoreboard. I'd been a competitive person. I wanted a scoreboard. I wanted to know if I was making a difference. And when I went to the University of Southern California, I started to work in areas, enrollment management and those kinds of things, where you had a scoreboard. You knew how things turned out. And boy, once I got to USC, it really launched me. It was a place that was just fantastic. I was a grad student. I was working on my doctorate. I was working full time. I just found this passion for trying to make a difference with students. And then, of course, it just kind of went on from there. It's been fantastic. And the student connections and the difference you had the opportunity to make, it really sticks with people. I always tell our team, as a higher education leader, we have this great moment to make a difference in a person's life, but we rarely know when it happens. Sometimes we find out about it later, that something you said, something you did made a difference. And so for me, it really launched out of USC, and then it was off to the races, trying to make a difference in all sorts of positive ways for people that came to colleges and universities.
Can you give us some insight into the function and role of enrollment management within the context of a university? Because I'll be upfront, Roger. Last time I thought about enrollment, I don't have kids yet, especially of college age. But last time I thought of enrollment, I was enrolling in college, right? And for maybe many of the people that watch this that haven't worked in higher education, they don't necessarily know the outside of them enrolling and maybe their children, right? So give us a little bit of a peek behind the scenes of what actually takes place in enrollment management.
Yeah, well, it's changed a lot over the years. I mean, 20 years ago, if someone was admitted to a college, that was good enough. Today, they really want to be recruited and courted. And so enrollment management is the practice, really, of ensuring that you enroll and meet the different goals that the institution wants to have. And so for me, we've been very fortunate at the University of Oregon. 13 of the 14 largest freshman classes in the history of the school, and we've been around since 1876, have all come on my watch. And in fact, this fall, we'll set a new record for the largest ever, beating last year's record.
Congrats on that. That's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna beat the record by over 10%, and that's with some headwinds that came from the pandemic. So I'm really proud of the team. But I think one of the things, the student services and enrollment management piece, I like to say that when we're out there talking to prospective students, we make them promises, we set expectations, and then the student services side of my role, housing and dining and university health services and all those parts of my portfolio, we have to kind of cash the check. We have to fulfill the promises that we've made. I think when you put it all together, you create these great relationships with students and families, and you help them see what their future can be. As a mission, I don't know if there's one more exciting than that. Helping people imagine and find their futures.
I wanna stick on a point you made a little bit longer here. So you mentioned, it's evolved a lot since you started. I think this dialogue in itself is a rare opportunity to maybe kind of document some of the evolution of what you've seen. Like, take us a little bit further into what that evolution has looked like, at least through your eyes.
So last century, in the 80s and 90s, when I was getting into higher education, the 90s more than the 80s, late 80s, the web was in its infancy. You didn't recruit students using the internet. And I remember when we began doing that. When I was at the University of Alabama, we were the first school in the country to utilize a DVD in recruitment. That was in about 2001. And in fact, we ran a viral marketing campaign with iTunes. And I thought it was such a great idea. We'd give people free iTunes if they spread the word. You know what the problem was? Nobody knew what an iTunes was.
Oh, you were way ahead of your time on that.
Ahead of it, And so when I look at that evolution of phone calls and mail in the mailbox to social media, web-based recruitment, when I was at Indiana University, we were the first in the country to use personalized video to recruit high school students. And it was really groundbreaking. Incidentally, I took that with me to the University of Oregon. I didn't leave that idea behind. But, I think one of the easy ways to say it, Adam, that applies to your business leaders that are listening to this, we've moved from mass marketing to individual marketing. The way student recruitment's done today is dramatically different than 20 years ago, even 5 to 10 years ago. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, all of social media. It's amazing how what a role it plays in enrollment management. And so for us, we've always tried to be kind of on the front edge, which is hard because it's always changing, but connecting and meeting our students where they are has been one of our goals.
Yeah, it's that customization is everywhere around us now. And if we think about like what social media has done, and maybe I'm going to talk you into getting a TikTok channel set up. I just set mine up, but I might get you there, Roger. I'll work with you a little bit longer.
you're going to need to work on that, Adam. It's
We
going to take
won't
some
make you
convincing.
dance. Don't worry. It doesn't
I
have
don't
to be.
know.
You know what I think would be the most interesting thing, and this is kind of why I asked you that previous question, is you throughout your career have remained you're innovative, like your thought process behind it. It's just like if you think about, let's just say traditional business versus higher education. Sometimes higher education doesn't get the reputation always. And let's just say in enrollment, maybe the science side does in biology or some type of breakthrough, right? But enrollment, you don't always think of as necessarily the most innovative department or area, but you've showcased throughout your career, like how important innovation is and what it can do. So when you say things like we were promoting iTunes before anybody knew what iTunes was, that's a big deal. So now when I say the TikTok thing, I'm like, oh, here we go, University of Oregon or Rogers, something's happening with TikTok because it's the next innovation. Like I'll be upfront, I wasn't like, so excited about doing it myself, but the other co-founder here, Chirag's like, hey, you got to do it, Adam. And I'm like, okay. But once I did it and I understood it, I fell in love with it. It's amazing. Yeah. It's awesome. So I'm sure that you'll go through your own different ways of innovation. And I'm curious to feel or to get your opinion or to get your insight into, we've had a lot of ups and downs in the last couple of years, a lot of, different things that have taken place. For context, for everybody watching this, 2022, what things are on the horizon or what spaces are you looking to innovate in currently?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's been a really tough time. We're a large organization, 1,900 team members, about a $200 million budget. We impact students from the time they're in high school till the time they graduate. And so the challenges come with all those personal interactions and the changing expectations that people have for higher education. Our students today, they don't go in a bank, they don't go in a bookstore, and they're doing everything online. And they want to do it 24/7. And so how do we meet them where their needs are? How do we address sort of today's environment? So you have to be nimble. And there's a lot of challenges coming for higher education, right? I mean, cost is a big one. Families, it's expensive to earn a college degree these days. And so for us, we're trying to think of creative ways to address costs. We've done some of those things. I'm proud of that. We're one of the few universities in the country that offers guaranteed tuition, which was done so that families would know what their cost is. I mean, if you go buy a house, people don't say to you, well, you want to buy this house? In 4 years, I'll tell you what the total cost is going to be.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that. And for a university, it shouldn't work like that either. So we've tried to do some things to address some of the challenges. But I think cost is a big one. I think as we come out of sort of the pandemic, people want to see the return on investment. What's the value of a degree these days? And so we need to make sure we're addressing those and doing so in ways that are not just a mailer in your mailbox, but are innovative, creative, and sort of address, how people interact with business and industry in the world today.
I have a gripe here, or not a gripe. I just have a funny story, actually. So maybe a couple of years back, a friend of mine, their child was going to, or I should say young adult, it was going to college. And I went with them and I go to my first time stepping foot in a dorm and I don't know how long. And I was so thrown off by two things. Number one, there's no books. I remember being in school and seeing and having like stacks of books everywhere and things like that. And I was like, how do you guys study? Like, where are your books at? Like, there's no evidence of, and everybody like I was crazy. Like, why would we do that? Why would we carry those heavy textbooks? And I'm thinking to myself, like, because that's the college experience. You have to carry heavy textbooks and put them in
right.
Well, so I remember that's the backbreaking experience of carrying a bag full of textbooks across campus. So that was the first part. The second part was the food. I was like, what happened to the days of just your dried up chicken breast and something else? No offense, Michigan State. This is a long time ago, but we were eating dried up chicken breast and who knows when broccoli, right? Like cafeteria style. Now it was all like Vegas style sushi and this and that. And I'm like, like these kids these days, Roger, I don't know.
Yeah, it's changed, Adam. We're in the midst of a $220 million housing transformation project.
Amazing.
And when I look at what we're building and what we're creating compared to where I spent my freshman year, I mean, it's night and day. I honestly could move into these places myself and I'd feel okay. They're just amazing. So we've opened, a brand new building. We've got 2 more that come online in fall 2023. And for dining, oh my gosh, made to order sushi, made to order bowl food. Everything is fresh. You can get from vegan to vegetarian to anything. Turkey tetrazzini is not on the menu anymore, thankfully. And, and so it's just really changed. And kind of suite style living where maybe two people or four people share a bathroom, instead of one just at the end of the hall. It's completely different. But here's the thing. Our housing transformation project, we have a new way to manage deferred maintenance. We tear the buildings down. I mean, no one wants to live in a 1950s built residence hall with cinder block walls. It's just not what today's students want. And so you can either spend millions of dollars maintaining that building, or you can come to the place where we've come and said, if we want to lead in this area, this building's got to come down. And we've got to build some things that relate more to what our students and families expect. And so I'm not sure we're quite Vegas style. I haven't been to Vegas in a while, so maybe we are. But I can tell you, when you buy a blueberry muffin from our organization, those blueberries came from a farm about 50 miles away from campus. I mean, It is farm to table. It's unbelievable. When I have business colleagues come and visit on campus, I always take them to eat on campus. And they seem a little skeptical. They'll kind of be like, oh, really? Shouldn't we be going to a nice restaurant? And then, I take them into these facilities that look like a city market out of Los Angeles. And it's all fresh, made to order. It's incredible.
Yeah, it is incredible.
Facility, just to add one more thing. Not only the made to order sushi, I mean, you can get Japanese food, Indian food, Italian food, deli food, vegan and vegetarian, health food, as well as a sit-down restaurant where you can order and tableside service. So it's very different from the days of you and I being in school.
Roger, I have no proof on this, but I swear there's got to be a stat somewhere. Quality of living for the college side and also the retirement living is outpacing everything in the middle. That's all I have to say. I'll transition from there, but I'm telling you, I've interviewed some individuals in that space, and I'm like, how old do you have to be to live? This is ridiculous. All right, moving on. I won't.
You've opened a whole new market for me, Adam. I hadn't thought about marketing to the retired folks. Come back, get a degree, and you can move in and live with us. It's a whole new idea. I'll have to share it with the team.
And that's where I wanted to take this interview next was the team. 1,900 people or over 1,900 people that are, within enrollment management from different areas. And just thinking about the book that's going to be coming out, we're just going to do a little teaser for everybody watching just to let you know we'll be bringing Roger back on the show when the book is live and the book is out. And we'll do a deep dive into his writing and thoughts on this. But I do want to at least touch on the topic. So what are some of the things or the ideas that you plan to propose in the upcoming book? And we're not holding you to this, by the way, nothing's through editing or final, but what are some of the ideas you plan to propose?
I want to talk about leadership because I think that's what matters. Mission matters. And the leader supporting the mission and connecting with the team. And so when I think about, and it's a large organization, some of those folks are union represented, some are not. It's a wide variety of those 1,900 people. I think what I really am excited to talk about in the book is how do we manage resources? And there's all sorts of resources. There's fiscal resources, there's physical plant kinds of resources, but the most important one is always our human resources. It's our team members. And so I think one of the things over the course of my career that I like to think I've done well is I sort of find where people are strong and let them play to their strengths, empower people to make a difference and provide opportunities for people to find success, and identifying the characteristics, the skills, the knowledge, the abilities that people have and really putting them in a position to shine is something that I think I've done pretty well over my career. And so I'd like to talk about that and maybe give some nuggets to other leaders that they might be able to take away and utilize. And, because when you come down to it, building teams is the most important thing we do as a leader. It's not everything that Roger can do or Adam can do. It's what's the team that we build around us, and how as a leader can we stay focused on those core principles, the things that really matter to our mission. And I think they have to be only a few. I think organizations can get a little scattered when they get too broad in terms of all the places they're looking. And so finding those overarching goals and helping the team work to achieve those goals, that's the part that's exciting for me. And I think that's the part that I hope comes out as I sort of finish off this part with the book. And I hope it'll be interesting to folks.
Awesome. All right. So we'll cut the book talk there. Everybody watching, we're bringing Roger back. Don't worry. But I want to transition now into just leadership in general. Obviously when things are going well, maybe the numbers are being hit. I mean, you're hitting record numbers like you're going to do with the next enrollment as well. Everything's good at that point. But when things are shaky, when things are choppy, last couple of years have been tricky for many organizations, not just higher education, but worldwide. What are some things that you maybe draw on that kind of get you through?
It's a great question. And I think, the last couple of years have been choppy. And speaking of books, there wasn't one on the shelf we could just pull off that said Pandemic for Dummies or whatever. So it has been choppy. And I think higher education is entering kind of a choppy period. We know that there's going to be fewer high school graduates in the next coming years than there have been so far. The value proposition is being challenged. And quite honestly, with 1,900 team members, it's always challenging. Everybody's got different opinions and different goals. I think one of the things that we've tried to do and that I've tried to do as a leader is convey unwavering optimism. I think that's really important. When things are struggling a little bit, be that optimist, the person that says, we're going to make it through this and we're going to come through it better than how we entered. I think that's a really good point. I think, communicating, it's hard to do in a large organization. We do it in all sorts of ways, but I try to communicate with folks so that everyone's clear on what we're trying to do. And then I feel fortunate. I'm starting year 13 at the University of Oregon. So over that time and throughout my career, I'd like to think that I've sort of demonstrated integrity, conviction of purpose. And I think people can rally behind that. And one other thing I would say, particularly when it gets choppy, and this is an old Coach John Wooden quote, don't confuse activity with achievement. And I think in our teams, we've been very clear on what we're trying to achieve. Activity, that'll keep you busy, right? I mean, a hamster running on a wheel is very active, but they don't go anywhere. Focusing on achievement and how to accomplish goals, that's something I think we've been pretty successful at doing. And I'd like to think that as the leader of the organization, I've helped to fuel that.
Well, that's going on TikTok, just so you know, Roger. That was excellent. That's going on TikTok. All good. So one of the things that you proposed the entire collegiate system's going through is this idea of really personalizing things for the individual versus just having a set system that everybody maybe goes through in the same way. So that personalization view. As you kind of go through that, I'm curious to hear, so for example, at Mission Matters, we're trying to do that all the time, right? That's a thing. So one of the things that we're doing now, and for our newsletter subscribers, you'll see this, is we're going to start adding some different types of videos and content. There's different ways that we play with how we personalize things, not just for our clients, but for our audience overall. And we're trying to get better. Now, we're, a team of 25. How do you convey, or how do you get a team of, let's just say 1,900 with all these different, views? And I'm sure there's individuals on your team that have been there much longer than yourself. There's a way that it was always been, right? And not picking on anybody, by the way, obviously, but I'm just curious from your end, because I've never led a 1,900 person organization or department. How do you get everybody kind of on the same page, or kind of moving in that same direction on personalization, which is, in my opinion, somewhat counter trend to how things were done previously?
Yeah, no, you're right. And it's difficult. I always say we're trying to turn a large aircraft carrier, constantly. And those are not easy. And I don't have any experience in the Navy, so it's really, really tough. But I think part of it is sort of goal definition. We are not an organization that's lost on 30 goals, right? We try to stick to just a couple big overarching goals and principles. And those need to be applicable to not just the people in recruitment, but our team in housing and dining, and every person in our organization, from the vice president who leads this group to those that might be working in custodial or other kinds of role. I'm not trying to segment. There's a broad range of people in our organization. And if we stay focused on what we call the student life cycle, how do we create and exceed expectations at every step in our experience with a student? That becomes easier to focus on. We reach out to about 250,000 students every year to these freshman classes. And one of the things that we try to do is obviously personalize it, but find creative ways to share what our experience is. We're not trying to be somebody that we're not. We know who we are and where we're trying to go. And if we convey that, we think enough people will want to join us that we'll continue to set records. But I think really, Adam, it's being clear on your mission, being clear on the values of your organization, and really being clear on where you've been, where you are, and where you wish to go, and who you want to be as an organization. That's the part, I think, where I try to help coach and lead and get all of our teams sort of moving in the same direction. But I would be less than truthful if I didn't tell you it's challenging at times. and particularly what we've just been through the last couple of years. It's been tough. But I think, we've tried to stay focused on our core mission. Everyone helps contribute to that. That's really important. We want to hear from all 1,900 people and have the opportunity to make a difference and set the path for us. So I guess I'd close that section by just saying, Every organization has to have a North Star. You have to know what you're striving to become. And we've been very clear on that. And that's why we've set records. It's not just the largest freshman class, as an example. We've had the most diverse 10 of the last 13 years. We've gone from 17% of our student population coming from an underrepresented, underserved population to 35% today. Moved the GPA from a 3.4 to a 3.75 this fall. These are measures, and that's another important thing about leadership. What you measure is what will impact what people see is important. And so we're really clear on what it is we're trying to do. Sorry, I kind of went on a long tangent.
No, it's great. And it makes sense. And on my end, I'm just thinking about what I like about this is to kind of just juxtapose the experiences, higher education, nonprofits, traditional business, if we want to call it that way, right? But all of them have a lot of the same challenges. And I think I've conducted so many interviews, and hopefully many of my audience have drawn some of these same conclusions, is that we're not all that different in these different spaces. There's nuances to everything, industry, of course, strategy, like there's nuances infinite, right? But some of the core challenges or opportunities in leadership, I mean, they remain the same. I have to say, Roger, it's been excellent having you on the show. Looking forward, of course, to the next time you come back on when we do a deep dive into your writing and into the book after it's released. But for now, I'll just ask, so what's next? I mean, what's next for you? What's next at the university?
Yeah, well, I think what's next is we're just going to keep building and keep achieving and trying to make a difference. That's what our team, that's what our organization does. For me, I sort of view the world as always changing. Right? It's always changing. And so we need to adapt and be nimble. Like I said, that can be tough for big organizations like ours, but I'm always ready for new challenges. Higher education certainly has plenty of those, Adam. So I think for us...
Understatement of the day. All good. Roger, if somebody like to follow your work or follow your journey or just learn more about University of Oregon, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, well, they can certainly look at our website at ssem.uoregon.edu. You can hit me on Twitter at UOVP Dr. T. Come look at us on Twitter, and certainly I'm on LinkedIn. Any of those places, we tell a lot of our story of the things that are going on in our organization.
Fantastic. And we'll put all that information in the show notes so that our audience can just click on the links and head right on over. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time listening to Mission Matters or engaging with the platform, we're all about bringing on entrepreneurs, executives, experts, leaders, having them share their mission, why they do what they do, how they're doing it, like what can we all learn from it? How do we all benefit and grow together? If that's the type of content that you're into or sounds interesting or fun or exciting, hit that subscribe button because we have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line and we don't want you to miss any episodes. And Roger, again, really a pleasure having you on the show today. Looking forward to the next time we get to work together. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. It's been great.